Okay, this is looking good. I think. As far as I can tell, it's working. Just gonna chill for a couple minutes. Well, anyone who's watching this, thank you for watching so much. As the title and the description explain, we are going to be going through and breaking down everything, or at least most things, in this year's Halloween Horror Nights event. The mazes, the offerings, the food. And I know that sounds weird to add with those other two things, but it's basically like really high quality carnival food if you've never been before, and that sounds terrible. And frankly, everything here should be served with a side of Pepto, but we'll get into that. Um, but yeah, if you are new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping in. This is Park Hopping with Jack, me. And basically, we just go into the history of different amusement parks from all over the country and maybe someday the world. Uh, so you can check out some of my other videos that I've made before. I'm just killing a few minutes right now because I said this would start at 3 and we're not quite there yet. But this year I wanted to do this especially, partly because the channel's only existed this year, but also partly because this is Horror Nights' 30th anniversary. 30 years of 30 Fears. And so there's a lot of returning characters, a lot of history that is coming into play in this event this year. And frankly, I'm just covering Orlando, and that's already a lot. Because this also happens at Universal's other parks, both in California and in, uh, well, Beijing just opened, so I don't know if they've got an event planned, but then, not Shanghai, uh, Singapore. Universal Singapore does their own version of the event every year, which is very interesting because I don't know how big Halloween is over there. But I still think it's cool to see. Uh, all right. I guess in the meantime, while we're waiting for 3 o'clock to roll around, we I figure I'll talk about some upcoming video ideas I've been stewing over. I know my release schedule is not fantastic. It is neither often nor consistent. Uh, that mainly has to do with the fact that I have a few part-time jobs as well as I am currently a grad student. So a lot of balancing going on. But at the beginning of this year, as sort of a New Year's revolution, I resolved to create this channel. Just out of it had been something I wanted to do for a long time, and I just kind of finally pushed it forward, using it as both a way to talk about the things I'm very passionate about, like talking about the history and designs and all sorts of aspects about these attractions from all over the country and, again, potentially the world, uh, as well as working on developing my own skills, both as a presenter and as a editor and otherwise filmmaker. Uh, so yeah, that's how that's going. But coming up, I do want to tackle a few things. I think it would be cool to do a certain, like a mini series on the different incarnations of the Haunted Mansion around the world. Maybe try to get that out in October or September, just sometime during the fall season to match up with the spooky atmosphere. In other news, I did intend to make this stream a couple nights ago on the opening night of Horror Nights this year, September 3rd. However, some technical and real life issues prevented that, so here we are today. But as always, if you have any suggestions or requests of what you think would be a cool topic to cover, please put that in the comments of my videos. I'm always happy to see people engaging, obviously. And if you do like what you see in my videos, please subscribe. That it means so much to me to know that people are actually watching and enjoying essentially my rants about theme parks. Um, and as I said, I'm trying to use this as an opportunity to improve myself, and so I hope to both show that and I hope that people see it. But anyway, it is now 3 o'clock, so let's dive right into it. So first off, on the splash page, we already have the first Horror Nights icon, loud and proud, right in front of us, Jack the Clown in his many different outfits and incarnations. And he is going to be central as he's returning as the central icon for this year, but he's hardly alone there. For context, Jack was a character first introduced in the year 2000 as the first original Horror Nights icon. Previously, the event had been hosted by a couple characters, like the Crypt Keeper was there for a couple years and even hosted the parade at one point. But in 2000, they decided to come up with their own original character. That was Jack the Clown. And oh my God, did they really play this guy up? In order to test how effective he was, they literally had him running around not only the Universal property, but surrounding areas, just scaring the shit out of people. The days they were testing him, there was signs up, "Beware of evil clown" and such. He got a very strong reaction, and he just hit it off as the first host of Horror Nights and made history. And they bring him back every few years whenever they really want to drive home, like, hey, this is important to Horror Nights. We're bringing back Jack. And in this case, as you can see with that right there, they're bringing back a lot of other people. So let's go ahead and dive right into the house. So we got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 houses this year. Some based on movie properties, but some are just based on their own stuff. The tagline this year is Halloween Horror Nights 30, never go alone. And a lot of the advertising has depicted Jack has basically been capturing people to bring out their biggest fears, people who have gone to the event alone. But let's go ahead and dive right in with the licensed houses. This one I am very excited for is a house entirely based on Netflix's The Haunting of Hill House, which is this fantastic and macabre series. If you haven't seen it or its sister show, The Haunting of Bly Manor, highly recommend if you're a horror fan. A lot of subtle horror, psychological horror. Really keeps you guessing in a lot of ways that I really loved. But this seems to be entirely based on The Haunting of Hill House. They're heavily using the figure of, I'll just call her the bent neck lady not to spoil anything. But that's a prominent ghost in the series. And I love some of the imagery they're using for this. Just the image of Hill House with the glowing red windows. And we've seen some images of the facade of just like recreating the exterior of the house, which is very cool. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, here we go. So I think it's an indoor facade so they can keep the darkness around the house, but you have just here, let me get this in a new tab so we can see it bigger. Boom. Just this decrepit old mansion with boarded up windows that glow red. Very ominous, very spooky. I love it. It's like, if you've watched the show, you know it's such a pinnacle of a stereotypical haunted house in the best way. Moving on from that. This one I've been very excited for. This was originally meant to be one of the houses in 2020, but obviously due to the COVID pandemic, Halloween Horror Nights was greatly reduced in its scale to the point where really all they did was open literally a couple of houses during day hours for guests, and only on like certain dates. Those being The Bride of Frankenstein Lives, which we'll cover later, and The Revenge of the Tooth Fairy, which we'll also cover later. But then, very limited, like for only a couple days, they opened Beetlejuice. And as the name implies, it's going to be every year at Horror Nights, they have what a lot of people refer to as a joke house. That is to say, something that's a little less intense horror for the people who are a little more squeamish. In 2019, which I was lucky enough to attend, it was the equivalent to that was Ghostbusters, which was so well made. I believe one of the prop makers for that was Trader Brandon, the former Imagineer who's responsible for Trader Sam's bar at Disneyland and Trader Sam's Grog Grotto at Disney World. He is awesome. And so that set a very high standard in my eyes for the joke house. So I'm really hoping Beetlejuice can follow suit, especially because it's a property I love so much. The movie's great. I was lucky enough to see the Broadway show, which I adore. And just the images I'm seeing now are great. We see the Maitlands in their scary forms. We see Beetlejuice's whole carnival get up, and we see the sandworm and snake Beetlejuice. It seems like, so for those who don't know, actually, Beetlejuice has a bit of a history with the Universal Parks because he is not a Universal property, but he has for the longest time now been a walk-around character in the parks. And even on a couple occasions had his own shows, most famously and most tragically, the Beetlejuice Rockin' Graveyard Review, which had an iteration both at California and in Orlando. The Orlando one was very sadly bulldozed to make way for Fast and the Furious Supercharged, a much, much disliked ride. But again, character still walks around the parks, and I am so excited that he's getting his own house this year, so we're going to see how that goes. And oh my god, just look at this screenshot. So we got Adam Maitland as his monster form with the like stretched out nose and the eyeballs on his fingers, and then we have the giant face of Beetlejuice's snake form that he uses to scare the Deetzes. And then we've got Adam's model of the town, which plays a central role in the movie if you've seen it. Uh, so that's very cool. It looks like we're going to be walking through the attic, maybe even going through the door to the netherworld. That's awesome. Ready to say his name 3 times. I love it. Oh my God, is that? And then Dante's Inferno Room, the the strip club that one of the characters creates to trick Beetlejuice and keep him out of the way. If you've never seen Beetlejuice, this must sound insane, but it's such a fun movie, and I highly recommend if you've never seen it. Oh, and then again, so it looks like we actually might get shrunken down into the model, which again happens to the characters at one point, and see Beetlejuice's grave in the town cemetery. Uh, I'm sure there's going to be some jump scare popping out of that to scare the crap out of us. Probably Beetlejuice himself, but who knows? So again, I am super excited for that house as the joke house of the year. Uh, then we got a big one, returning licensed character to Horror Nights. He's been here a few times. Leatherface himself with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It seems like this is going to be based a lot on the original, just from some of the imagery I've seen. Yeah, and they even refer to the 1974 horror classic. So it's going to be based on the original, not the franchise as a whole, which is a good thing if you ask me, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre is kind of spotty with a lot of its sequels and especially its reboots. But step right inside the story, experiencing every nightmarish moment for yourself. Explore every familiar room in the Sawyer home, from the parlor to the blood-spattered kitchen. You'll face carving knives, meat cleavers, meat hooks, and of course that roaring, slicing, flesh-ripping chainsaw. Universal loves its chainsaw. So it sounds like, in addition to Leatherface, we'll probably be encountering the rest of the Sawyer family themselves, but obviously Bubba here is going to be the main threat. Let's see if we can get any imagery from this, because I haven't seen this. I haven't seen too much info regarding this one. I'm really hoping for it. Oh God, and you're not really even seeing much if you just Google image it. That's very interesting, because the event has started. It started on the 3rd. This is being streamed on the 5th. So that's interesting. Huh. Oh, wait, is this? So that looks like it might be a photo from inside. It's hard to tell. Posted by IGN, so that's interesting. But and then we got Bubba's face plastered on some merch. Well, Bubba and whoever's face he's wearing. But regardless, I think that's going to be fun. The original Texas Chainsaw is a classic horror movie. Okay, and now we're kind of sort of out of the licensed ones. I say that just because this next one feels like a halfway. The Bride of Frankenstein lives. So this one did appear at the limited event they did in 2020 and was obviously meant for the 2020 event before that got canceled. And as the name implies, this is going to center around the Bride of Frankenstein, with her as the protagonist. Basically, uh, it seems like her whole goal in this, from what I've heard, is to revive the monster, and like be with him, but they're being seemingly attacked by the brides of Dracula. Yeah, don't get caught between her and the brides of Dracula, who she captures and drains in hopes of reanimating her love. Okay, so never mind, she's captured them. That's interesting. So she's just kind of gone mad with power trying to revive the monster. So that's interesting. I love this art, by the way. Just I hope the hair and like the makeup look this good in the house because this is a great look. The lightning bolt streak up the side, the like bandaged arms with the rubber gloves and the lab coat, and this bone saw looking thing. I mean, it looks basically that good in this little black and white still. I feel like we could probably get a lot more pictures for this one, just because, again, it did open temporarily at last year's event. Huh. Well, this is a shot. I know this is a shot from that sort of promotional video where she's simultaneously jabbing some lightning rod type mechanism into the monster's chest while also holding back one of the brides of Dracula. But again, the idea of this seems pretty clear and straightforward. You're going to be going through the halls of Castle Dracula, and on one end, you're going to have the bride like doing whatever she can manically to reanimate her monster, but then you're also going to have the brides of Dracula trying to escape and attack you on the way out, probably because you're just fresh blood. So this is one of the big ones for this year. Halloween Horror Nights icons captured. So, as the name implies, this is a house going to be entirely based around the icons that have previously hosted Halloween Horror Nights, the big ones at that. And just like, let's go down real quick and introduce them left to right. So, far on the left, we've got Chance. She was sort of originally imagined, as I'm aware, as the Harley Quinn to Jack's Joker. Basically, his girlfriend, who's just as psychotic as he is. She actually hosted. She's listed with the icons. She actually hosted the event herself for a year or so, where the idea was like after Jack had been locked away, as usually is the case after he hosts, someone manages to seal him away or something. She kind of went nuts and took over his position, causing just as much chaos as he did. Then we have the director, who is just the ultimate snuff photographer in the worst way. Basically, his idea is pretty straightforward, where he creates these films of people going through actual suffering because he thinks it's greater art, higher elevated art. And he is often associated with a old series of houses called All Night Die-In, where, as the name implies, you're going through a drive-in theater, stepping into these movies as you're tormented by both the characters from those movies as well as the director himself. Then we have the caretaker, Albert Kane. He is definitely one of the older of the icons. Basically, he's this old mortician who would basically do these like inhumane things to the corpses he had and eventually actual victims that he'd kidnap in search of the location of the soul. Basically, you can just tell looking at him. Like, let's get a better look at Albert here. He's literally just this tall, gruesome, top-hatted, like macabre-looking guy who just takes great joy in tearing apart bodies especially with these giant scissor-looking things. God damn. Just going to keep that open so we can go and switch back and forth when we need it. And then, of course, there's Jack the Clown. I kind of explained him at the beginning of the stream, but just a quick recap of his backstory. Jack Schmidt was a circus clown with Dr. Oddfellow's traveling circus. However, at the same time, he was also psychotic and was killing kids and stuffing their bodies into boxes in his dressing room. Uh, Eventually, Dr. Oddfellow, the ringleader of the circus, found out when the police started closing in on Jack and he asked Dr. Oddfellow to hide him. He showed Dr. Oddfellow where the bodies were, and Dr. Oddfellow, panicking and realizing this could take him down with it, killed Jack and stuffed him in the large prop Jack in the Box in the same room. Well, police came, found everything, were horrified, took everything away, and then years later, people exploring the abandoned fairground found the Jack in the Box. Somebody was stupid enough to wind it up, and out pops the corpse of Jack Schmidt. And that unleashed him both literally and metaphysically. From there, basically, it was a long series of events with him just being released, wreaking havoc, and then eventually killing Dr. Oddfellow and taking over the circus, creating the event known as the Carnival of Carnage, which was both the name of one of the theme of one of the events one year, as well as a whole live show performed that same year. Very cool. You can find it all on YouTube, I think, even still. But ever since then, Jack has been a mainstay of Horror Nights, and it's always great to see him come back. Then we've got the Usher. He functions in a similar way in how his houses are executed to the director, but his character is basically this supernatural, almost ghoulish looking usher. Hold on, did I hear someone? Hey, Tim's here. So real quick before I continue on, this is Tim of Golden Shamrock Films. You can find both of us as regulars over on Lone Knight Gaming. Oh wait, actually, am I capturing your audio? Give me a second.
Mute myself.
Give me a second. Sorry, folks, just one brief moment while I try to get his audio in here. Can you hear yourself? Oh, okay. In that case, let's continue. So I was basically explaining the houses, and when I got to Halloween Horror Nights icons captured, I figured I'd go through and give a brief rundown of all the history of them left to right before getting into the details of the house. But I just got to the Usher, who basically he's this zombie-like, theater usher, who would guide the people going through his houses through these different horror movies. His original house was called Ripped from the Silver Screen. And then essentially, the horror with him is, again, he's like some kind of ghoul, and then he takes theater etiquette very seriously. Deadly serious, even. No, this is the Usher. He's an old Horror Nights icon from a few years back. I haven't gotten to the puppet theater yet. But that's even scarier. The Muppet Theater Maze. Bieber. But just to give you an idea of the threat of the Usher, yeah, I wouldn't piss him off. But yeah, so that's the Usher. And then this one is the storyteller. Again, she looks like a harmless old lady, but her details are a little more gruesome than that. Basically, she has the ability to give life to any story she tells, and she adores horror stories. She's also been known to capture people, read stories to them, and then rip out their tongues or some other gruesome thing that kills them. When she first appeared as the icon, she became the facilitator of bringing in the dimension of Terra Crumptus, one of her stories, which was a apocalyptic land ruled by the Terra Queen. It seems like we are actually going to see the Terra Queen this year. I'll explain more about that when we get to the scare zones. I think it's just appropriate that we see the return of the Terra Queen when we see the return of the storyteller. So that's going to be fun. And then finally over here, we have Lady Luck. And, I mean, she's literally the embodiment of luck. Both good. Yeah, exactly. It's literally someone at Horror Nights heard that song and thought, yeah, we can work with that. And just like how luck can be good luck or bad luck, sometimes she appears as a beautiful woman, and then sometimes she turns into a ghoulish monster. The year she appeared as the icon, all of the houses had certain aspects of choice, where both there were like different paths that the guests could take, and also the characters within the house would always make a choice that would result in their luck taking a turn for the worse. And in some way, you would always see her referenced around the time when the character made that choice. Uh, Now, and then there's one more character involved here that you can't quite see because he's not featured among the main lineup, but he's there in the back. You can kind of see his nose and teeth. And that is Fear. And I do mean that literally. He is fear itself. Fear was basically the icon of the 20th year of Horror Nights, where they revealed that everything up until that point was actually his own machinations to be released. See, Fear was captured in this lantern and sealed away, but over the years he would let bits of his evil leak out, and those would form the icons. Eventually, in 20, the icons came together, conspiring as his pawns, represented by these creepy stakes, to release Fear from the lantern. Of course, at the end, Fear was banished back to the lantern along with all the other icons, and that is actually where we can transfer into talking about what this house is actually about. See, Halloween Horror Nights icons captured, all the icons are still in the lantern. And that's where you're going. You're going into the lantern where Jack is taking control and has kept all the icons captured there. So you're going to basically go through and you're going to be tormented by all the icons, like happy to have new victims for the first time in forever. One thing I do think is interesting to mention here is that there is tragically one very popular icon who cannot be here, and that is Bloody Mary. See, Bloody Mary was the icon one year at Horror Nights, and I do mean literally Bloody Mary, the mirror demon. You'd say her name 3 times and she'd appear. However, afterwards it became an issue of somebody apparently owns the rights to the Bloody Mary story, and they did not like Universal using it. Which felt weird to me that someone owns that, but unfortunately it led to a whole legal thing, and tragically Bloody Mary cannot appear in any new events, which is a shame because it was such a cool event the year she appeared. I highly recommend looking up info about it. Right? It's a ghost story. Now this is another house that highly ties into Horror Nights lore, and that is Scary, Horror in the Heartland. That is because it takes place in the town of Cary, Ohio, which almost every time, is the important part, that some Horror Nights house takes place, that's an original idea and it takes place somewhere, it's usually at or around or somewhere related to Cary, Ohio. Now, there is actually a place called Cary, Ohio, and they actually take some amount of pride in being related, but not actually connected to this version. But this seems like it's going to tackle a lot of the notable history of Cary and Horror Nights. The town placed a sign at the entry of Cary, Ohio, saying it's a nice place to live. Unfortunately, nobody lives here very long. No one escapes from Cary, where bad things just happen and new terrors rain down year after year. If it claws, bites, feasts on blood, or just likes to rip people to shreds, it somehow finds its way to Cary. Experience an endless parade of unimaginable terrors, from horrifying creatures to bloodthirsty maniacs. You can scream all you want in Carrie, but everybody is too busy with their own screaming to pay much notice. Interesting that there's not actually any images to go with this, but as far as I'm aware, it's going to tie into bringing back a lot of notable things that had to do with Carrie's past. For example, one such place was Meats, which was a butcher shop themed house from a few years back where Samuel Meats ran a butcher shop where they take the term to serve man very literally. The reason I know that's going to be involved is because there's been a few photos circulating around of people wearing these creepy masks of the Meats mascot. But I'm very excited for that. I love the like suburbia gone horribly wrong theme. Just the sign, like, because I've seen this is a physical sign they have outside the entrance of the desecrated like Cary, Ohio welcome sign. Such a great look. Moving on, this is another one with a lot of ties to the history of Horror Nights. Case Files Unearthed Legendary Truth. Legendary Truth is a running name for a lot of stuff to be associated with Horror Nights. Basically, it usually is a series that involves more outright paranormal occurrences and monsters and ghosts. There's been a few Legendary Truth related houses that have frankly been some of the greatest of all time. Um, it seems this one's going to be sort of a like going back into a film noir type era where this private investigator is getting caught up in all these monsters and paranormal occurrences. Like even with the splash art here, we see him like being closed in on by monsters and firing at some Lovecraftian horror. So like very like film noir Lovecraft look. I love it. It looks great. Step into the shoes of Boris Schuster, a hard-boiled private eye investigating the supernatural. Follow his search for clues into the darkness of a shadowy film noir world populated by ghouls, poltergeists, and all manner of monstrous terrors. Face horrific creatures in a seedy apartment, an abandoned warehouse, the Museum of Natural History, and more. Enter the Kitty Cat Club where you're attacked by terrifying she-devils. And search for the totems that will complete the tale of a mystery that's best left unsolved. So I like that idea, just sort of like going through this mystery and like film noir paranormal nightmare. The Wicked Growth Realm of the Pumpkin. This one's going to lean heavily into like some classic Halloween iconography, right down to the fact that I recently saw an image of the entrance to this maze, which is like a literal like tunnel made of jack-o'-lanterns. So let's see if we can get an image of that. Oh, well, that's a fantastic little bit of editing or advertising right there. Just this skeleton with a rotted pumpkin smashed over its head. Yeah. Okay, so this isn't quite the image I wanted for it. Uh, a lot of the images I'm referencing for this are from BioReconstruct on Twitter. They are fantastic at this. But yeah, it's a literal tunnel of jack-o'-lanterns, and at night these are all lit up, and like there's some weird lighting effects that make you feel like they're moving from what I've seen. But as the name implies, this is going to have to do with some like classic like jack-o'-lantern monsters. An evil rot has taken root in the land. It's time once again for the rise of the Pumpkin Lord, who grows Halloween like a malignant vine. His minions are scouring the countryside, collecting unwilling sacrifices in order to summon the Pumpkin Lord. The closer to Halloween, the more people practice the traditions, the greater the power of the Pumpkin Lord grow. Powers of the Pumpkin Lord grow. As the pumpkins grow ever bigger, your fear grows ever greater, and your odds of escape grow smaller. From the cemetery to the forest, there's no breaking free from the tenacious vines of the merciless pumpkin lord. So again, like it sounds like we're going to be tormented a lot by like pumpkin type monsters through like very classic like spooky locations like a graveyard and a haunted forest and all that. A lot of vine type things. That one seems like one of the more simple of the original ones this year, but I think it'll be cool. Now this one is the one I have heard the most awesome things about. Puppet Theater Captive Audience. Open Scene. A creepy abandoned old theater from the early 1900s San Francisco. A puppeteer and a ballet troupe have been trapped there ever since, and they'd kill for an audience. Whether you're a puppet or a patron, that's your cue to scream. All the blood will drain from your face as you see the green room run red with blood. Your horror grows as you come upon the grotesque living marionettes made from severed limbs. If you manage to escape their gory puppetry, then you'll become a part of the skeletal audience rotting in place. Ready for your final performance? So again, everything I've heard from the past couple nights has been people being terrified of this place. And that is a very good thing for Horror Nights. And I previously found this. I'll see if I can find it again. The entrance for this is like just, oh God, just look at some of these pictures. So I'm not going to linger on these too long because if you are going to the event for this year, I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, here we go. We got this entrance, which is just this collapsed and dilapidated theater. You see the like old posters for this event when it was meant to be open, and then there's just smoke and fire billowing out as rubble is like collapsed all over the place. The sign for the Grandeur Theater is collapsed. I think you can't see it here, but there's letters lying around from the fallen sign. But there's just something so like deeply creepy about like a person being turned into a marionette. Uh, I remember a few years back there was this terrible like Wizard of Oz animated sequel. The one thing people agreed about it though, other than that it wasn't that great, was there's this one scene where Glinda the Good Witch gets turned into a marionette that is just traumatizing. So I have high expectations for this. And then finally, our last returning house from what would have been 2020, Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. This one basically plays under the core idea of, well, what if a kid doesn't want to give his teeth to the Tooth Fairy? And that doesn't go very well. I've seen plenty of pictures of this one because it did like have its slight like smaller opening last year in 2020, where it feels like you're walking through a living storybook. Gone horribly wrong as these goblin-like tooth fairies like tear apart this house because this kid here refused to put his teeth under his pillow, so it's all his fault. You're about to discover the sinister reality behind the seemingly innocent childhood tradition. All children must give up their baby teeth to the goblin-esque tooth fairies or pay a gruesome price. It's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Step into the old manor house that has been swarmed by yellow-clawed fiends dripping with blood, teeth, and gore. Grit your teeth as you see the evil fairies extract their toothed bounty by force while their victims struggle in vain. Hold in your screams or risk exposing your own teeth to their monstrous, grasping claws. So yeah, it seems like this one's going to be playing a lot on like just the really uncomfortable idea of like teeth being ripped out in these goblin monsters. So that's, again, I heard really cool things about this when it appeared last year, so I'm looking forward to that. But Horror Nights isn't just the houses. No, no, no. See, there's scare zones. Scare zones, for those who have not been before, are basically these sectioned off areas around the park, just in the open, where there's theming set around, and then there's scare actors waiting and hiding to scare anyone who wanders in. And so we have a few interesting ones here. They don't have their own dedicated pages for the most part, but I will explain like what we got going on. So first and foremost, one I am very excited for is Crypt TV. For those who don't know, Crypt TV is an indie studio that produces short horror films. You can find their content on YouTube. Really awesome, a lot of original like content, and frankly, some really cool monster design that I'm very much looking forward to seeing brought to life here in like in a live setting. From what I've seen, we're going to see a lot of vignettes of different Crypt TV properties where their monsters will be hiding nearby. So that's going to be very cool. Step inside Crypt TV, a dark universe of monsters that reside in the same reality on your screen, in your pockets, and now in San Francisco. Then we got 30 Years of 30 Fears. The monsters you've dreaded from past Halloween Horror Nights have taken over the streets. They're back in your history. So like that says, it's sort of going to be like a highlight reel made physical of some of the most popular things from past Horror Nights events, both houses and scare zones, sort of isolated into their own little sections and thrown into this one scare zone. I know I did see a picture of when they were setting all this up that the Treeks and Foons are going to come back. And for context, the Treeks and Foons were sort of meant to be the less scary things. I mean, they're still creepy looking, but they're basically just these living cartoon characters turned morbid that run around, hop in and out of this foam, and just like goof around with anyone who passes by. They're literally just designed to be these like, again, their name is a play on Freaks and Toons. They're designed to just be these like, if you're really creeped out by all the other stuff, these guys still look creepy, but they're going to have fun with you in a good way. Seek and Destroy. This one's going to be kind of like an aliens like cyber apocalypse, where basically this alien overlord called the Controller has taken over New York, and you're like trying to avoid being caught. So, a ruthless alien cyber regime led by the Controller has taken over New York, turning humans into fuel, succumb or be destroyed. Sort of this like apocalyptic dystopian like authoritarian future run by an alien overlord. So I mentioned earlier, with the return of the storyteller, we're also seeing the return of the Terra Queen, and that is with Gorewood Forest. 16 years after the gory sacrifices of Terra Cruntis, the heartless Terra Queen is back. Evil is in her nature. So the Terra Queen is basically this like monster biker demon woman. Uh, and I do mean biker literally. She's got a giant bat-winged skeletal bike. uh, where she rules over Terra Cruntis and this like imagine if Mad Max was Lovecraftian. We have some of the set pieces for this area where it's like this twisted wood metal mesh. So that's going to be very cool. And then last dive into deep, our last dive for the year into deep Horror Nights lore. Lights, camera, action. Eddie's Revenge. So I said first and foremost at the beginning of this stream that Jack the Clown was the first original Horror Nights icon appearing first for the first time in the year 2000. Well, the year after that, they made some big plans for what to do next. See, Jack made such a splash, they made immediate plans to see if they could top themselves, and that was with his brother, Eddie. Whereas Jack was the sort of stereotypical evil killer clown, Eddie was going to be their play on the like archetype of the chainsaw swinging maniac. He had the Hannibal Lecter mask, like well, he swung a chainsaw around obviously, but interesting to show he was still related to Jack. He had similar green marks around his eyes, similar to Jack's makeup, implying that it might not just be makeup. Uh, but this was the year 2001. And in September 11th, 2001, the attack on the Twin Towers happened, and a lot of people became really uncomfortable with doing such a gory and terrifying mess. So very quickly, and I do mean quickly because a lot of advertising had already gone into Eddie appearing, including the famous ICU billboard, uh, which was put over a major highway in Orlando. This is a smaller version of it where it was just Eddie's eyes peeking out over the down at the drivers. I see you. Uh, but again, last minute, because of the 9/11 tragedy, they made the change to bring Jack back. And they very quickly put out an advertising campaign explaining the situation. And Eddie never got his spot in the limelight. Uh, he made a few very minor cameo appearances in other houses related to Jack, but never got his own thing. So the fact of the matter is, this time, Eddie is back. He is getting his revenge, and he's throwing you into it. Get ready for the feel-bad movie of the year. Eddie Schmidt, Jack the Clown's brother, is filming a horror film, and the monsters are real. So from what I've seen, this is basically you're going to be walking around a lot of like props that make it seem like a bunch of movie sets where the monsters from these movies of different genres are attacking you along with Eddie himself. And I'm sure knowing Eddie's theme, this is where we're going to find the Chainsaw Drill Team. For those who don't know, the Chainsaw Drill Team is the way we refer to the group of guys who just run around as scare actors with chainsaws and scare the crap out of people. They a lot of their effects come from making sparks on the ground with their chainsaws and other things. They are a treat to watch in action and terrifying if you're not ready for them. And then we've also got live entertainment. We have the return of Marathon of Mayhem, a light and water show on the lagoon in the main Universal Park. Marathon of Mayhem Carnage Factory being the name of this year's. So I assume we're going to see some like industrial themes like and gore like that in the projections. There's no manufacturing the screams as a terrifying show comes to life in Universal's Studios Lagoon. It's a fear factory. And then we've got Halloween Nightmare Fuel. A new show is igniting Halloween Horror Nights featuring fire, pyro, and aerial performances. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of info about this one because they have been very strict about no filming or photography of the show itself. But from the reactions I've been hearing, this is one to see if you're there. And then, of course, classic of Universal's Horror Nights is Riding in the Dark. See, they leave a certain set of rides open at night so that guests can still ride them, and maybe sometimes they'll have some slight variations to them, but I wouldn't count on it. So this year, staying open are The Revenge of the Mummy, the entire Wizarding World Diagon Alley section, Men in Black Alien Attack, Transformers the Ride, and the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket Coaster. And then, so that's going to be all your like attraction and like horror offerings this year. But there's one more factor for Horror Nights that I really love, and that is the food. See, Horror Nights specializes in what I referred to earlier as very high quality carnival food. And yeah, if that's not obvious just from this first picture, I don't know what is. That is a bourbon glazed donut burger with candied bacon and cheese. We have floats, twisted potato skewers, candied apples. I think these are called the shattered glass candied apples. So as the name implies and as the look implies, they've got this like hard candy coating around them that's like intentionally punctured in a few places to look like shattered glass piercing a heart. Jar cakes, which as the name implies are just cakes in jars. They have different ones themed to different characters. So this is the Jack the Clown one. Chance. We have Frankenstein cupcakes. Those are adorable. The Bride of Frankenstein wedding cake. And those are also just mini cakes. I don't know what this on the hair is made of. Obviously it looks edible, but I wonder what it's actually made of. It looks chocolate, some kind, maybe filled with something. Little graveyard cupcakes. I think these are related to Beetlejuice just from the colors and the little worms coming out of the dirt, quote unquote. These look amazing. These are pumpkin-shaped hot cocoa bombs. Blood-filled jelly donuts. Some noodle dishes. And then we have like a more comprehensive list around here. So we got some of the things I just mentioned. The pumpkin cocoa bomb, the jar cakes, the cupcakes, the twisted tater, which is that skewered twisted spiral cut potato. And you can get that alongside, like mixed with a twisted frank where they mix it together. You can get some donuts, including the donut slider. We have a lot of name references to stuff relating to the different characters. For example, the Carnival of Carnage characters get their own items, including Dr. Panetti's confetti battered Oreos, fried Oreos, classic carnival snack. No Chance in Hell PB&J fried peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with a hot honey drizzle. God, that's again, all of this sounds delicious in a really gross way that you're going to need a shot of Pepto to wash down. Oh, hey, Kevin. Uh, this is Kevin, the host of Lone Knight Gaming, who, again, like I said earlier, I appear regularly on. Go check him out on YouTube or on Twitch. There's the Tiny's Twinkies, deep fried Twinkies, again, classic carnival food. Jack's Old Fashioned Jack and Coke. Yes, they have cocktails and different drinks, so look forward to that. And Carnivore Smoked Wings. Barbecue, spice rubbed, and smoked for 3 hours. God, the barbecue. And they have different themed kiosks to different houses this year, including the Revenge of the Tooth Fairy themed kiosk, where you'll see bourbon candied pork belly, which is basically just like really thick cut bacon candied. It sounds real weird, but it's actually real good. It's on a stick. Beer floats, Monte Cristo waffle sticks, all the things to make your teeth fall out. uh, and then let's see. We have roasted lamb spit, so just some barbecue lamb. Grandma's skeleton tray, which is a vegan offering, sliced garlic pickles and white bread. The Wicked Growth Realm of the Pumpkin themed kiosk, where you can get bog slime, a cocktail made of gin, lime juice, and house-made matcha cardamom syrup. Fields of Scream gyoza dumplings. Pumpkin guts, which is the vegan zucchini and squash rings with toasted hazelnuts and pumpkin seeds. And Dolce pumpkin spiced churros. I've never had a pumpkin flavored churro, but that actually sounds good. But yeah, so that actually covers most of the offerings this year. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming in. Uh, it's only been a couple days, so the reactions for a lot of this stuff are still like trickling in. But I hope as it goes on, we'll hear more and more. Uh, and frankly, I'll get to learn for myself because myself and hopefully the people you've heard here today are going to be joining the festivities in late October, where I will of course be vlogging the whole way. So keep an eye out for that, and don't go alone. Thank you, everybody.